Hi and welcome to this Pilates session for teenagers. My name's Helena and I'm a Pilates instructor and a children's physio based here in Swansea. Before taking part in this Pilates session, please make sure that you've got a clear, safe environment to exercise in. Also, make sure that an adult is nearby to help you if needed. Remember, listen to your body and only do the exercises that you are comfortable doing. And if you have got any concerns or questions, have a chat with a physiotherapist who recommended these exercises to you. And more than anything, enjoy the session. Welcome to this Pilates session, which is suitable for young people aged 11 and over. We're going to make a start for our warm-up in standing. So, standing either on a nice flat surface, or if you're at home, you can be on a carpet or a rug. Just make sure that you're not half on the carpet and half off it. You want your feet to be nice and relaxed on the surface that you're standing on. We want our feet to be underneath our hips, and then we want our rib cage to be stacked on top of our pelvis. So we're going to think about how we're standing to start with. We want our feet to be relaxed and our toes nice and long, and our knees to be nice and soft. Let's come up and pop our hands on the top of our pelvis. And let's imagine that our pelvis is a bowl of water that's really full. Now, if we slump down in our lower back, that imaginary bowl of water is tipping out the back. And then if we grow up really, really tall, that bowl of water is tipping out the front. So let's practice tipping that bowl of water out the back and rolling forward, tipping that bowl of water out the front. And then when you're ready, we're going to rest halfway in between where that bowl of water is nice and central and not spilling forwards or backwards. We're going to come up and think about our rib cage, which is nicely stacked on top of our hips, and then our shoulders. Now, often a lot of us stand and sit with our shoulders rounded forwards. So we want to open through the front of our chest and make sure that our shoulders and our shoulder blades are melting down towards our waist. And then last of all, let's think about our head and our necks. Often we sit like this or stand like this as we're rounded through our whole spine. So let's have a gentle chin tuck in, so we're lengthening the back of our necks. And all the way through our exercises, whether we are kneeling or standing or sitting, I want you to imagine that our head is a helium balloon and it's floating upwards towards the ceiling, nice and lifted, so your whole spine is lengthened all the way up. Now, one of the really important things in all of our Pilates exercises is how we breathe. And how we breathe is important every day. So we're going to pop our hands just on the lower part of our rib cage. And I want you to imagine that you are blowing two big balloons up in your rib cage, which are our lungs. As you take a big breath in, and let that breath go as you let those balloons go down. And again, big deep breath in. And let that breath go. Lovely, well done. So, now we've set ourselves up in standing, we're going to practice transferring our weight across one side of the body and then back to the middle, across to the other side. And I want you to feel what that's like underneath your foot as you come across one side, and that extra weight going through that foot all the way through the toes and the back of the foot, and then across through to the other side. We're going to keep going, and I want you to think about all of those things we've just mentioned, coming up to that bowl of water in your pelvis, long, tall spine, shoulders rested down, long neck and lifted head. And think about your breath, just as you transfer your weight side to side. Keep a little check on those knees as well, making sure they're nice and soft. Lovely. Now, let's add an extra challenge to this. We're going to close our eyes. So we're sensing a little bit more what's going on underneath our feet. And we want to make sure that we're in control and that our foot is taking up all the support that it can on the floor underneath. Lovely. Now, instead of going side to side, we're going to practice going forwards and backwards. So we're coming forwards through the balls of the feet and through the toes, and then backwards through onto the heels. And just making sure that we're controlling through all of this movement, that we're not swinging forwards and backwards, but we're nice and controlled. That bowl of water in the middle is lovely and level, and we're not spilling forwards or backwards out the front or the back. Now we're going to close our eyes and practice the forwards and the backwards, keeping long and tall through our spines, just as we're warming our bodies up for this session. Let's make it a little bit more challenging now. We're going to practice imagining that we are drawing an 8 on the floor. So we're going to come to the side and we're going to circle round then to the front, and then we're going to come back to the middle, go out the back and circle round to the other side. Lovely, well done. Back to the middle, out the back. Now, if you feel really confident that you've got your balance, you can close your eyes and carry on. And just make sure that you're in control and that you're sensing the weight that your feet have got in contact with the floor all the way through this number 8 on the floor. Lovely, well done. And back to the middle. Now, let's get things working a little bit more. So this time, nice and soft at the knees, we're going to bring our weight through one side. And if you want to, you can pop your hands on your hips to give you a bit of balance. And you can fold then up the other leg, nice and steady. And then we're going to place it back down on the floor. Lovely. And then we're going to take our weight through the other side, and we're going to fold the other hip and knee up. Great. And don't forget through all of these exercises to breathe, because sometimes when exercises are a bit hard, we start tensing up and we start holding our breath. But it's really important that we remember, how did we breathe in the warm-up? We were breathing wide into the bottom of our rib cage, blowing up those big wide balloon lungs with our shoulders nice and rested down towards our waist. Fantastic, well done. Now let's add some arms into this. So reaching our arms up to the ceiling. And then as you place your foot down, let the arms rest down. And the other side, reaching our arms up to the ceiling. Lovely. Now if this is a little bit too tricky, just keep going with the legs only. You don't have to do the arms. Fantastic, well done. And we're going to come back to the middle now. This time you can keep your hands on your hips if that helps you balance. We're going to come across through one leg, and we're going to pick the opposite leg up, and then we're going to lengthen it out in front and then fold it back up again. Lovely. We're going to stay on the same side. A little bit of a bend in that supporting leg. We're folding that other leg up at the hip and lengthening out in front. And if we can do one more, you're doing really well. This is a hard one, this one. Brilliant, well done. And let's come across to the other side. So make sure you're nice and strong through that supporting leg. A little bit of a bend in that knee. Fold the other leg up. And we're going to lengthen that leg out in front and fold it back up. Well done. This is not an easy one to do. So if it's a bit more challenging after you've tried it, then you can tap the toe down in between. Okay, so that's another option for you if it's a little bit too tricky. And you can build up to it then as your balance gets better and you get stronger in that leg that's supporting you. Fantastic, well done. Now, a little bit more of a workout for these legs coming up. So, we are going to now go down a bit deeper into a squat. So let's let our hips go and our knees go, but just make sure that your weight is the same through both feet and your feet are nice and relaxed through the floor, but also really important to have a little check on that pelvis. So what we want to make sure is that that pelvis hasn't sunk down here somewhere, but equally that pelvis isn't sticking out. So imagine that bowl of water again. You've got that bowl of water and you don't want to spill it forwards or backwards. So if you want to have your hands on the hips to keep you balanced, we're going to bring your weight across through one side, and whilst you're really strong through that leg, we're going to lengthen the other leg out to the side like this. And then we're going to tap it down to the floor with that big toe, and then a little raise, and down to the floor. Now what's really important about this exercise is that we don't lean to the side when we're doing our leg taps, okay? So we stay up lovely and tall, keep nice and strong through that supporting leg, and we're just squeezing into those bottom muscles on that long leg, and a little tap to the floor. Lovely, well done. Nice and long leg, toe tap, the big toe towards the floor. Let's see if we can do one more. Well done. Now, let's come back to the middle. We're still staying down into that little squat. And now let's come through the other leg. Make sure it's good and solid, it's taking your weight, and you're strong all the way from the pelvis all the way down to the foot. Hands on your hips to help you balance. And then we're going to lengthen the other leg out again. The same again for the other side. And we're going to lengthen it out, and we're going to tap that big toe to the floor. Lovely, well done. Keep strong through that supporting leg. And keep a little check on all the other parts of you as well, so that when you are lifting that leg, that we're not doing a tilt to the side, but we're staying grown, long and tall. Just a few more on that leg. Fantastic. One last one if you can. Brilliant. Okay, back to the middle. Shake those legs out. They'll be starting to feel a little bit of a burn now as we work up those thigh muscles and those bottom muscles all the way down to our feet and our ankles. So this time we're going to come into a bit of a wider squat to work these muscles more. So what we're going to do is have our toes and our feet pointing outwards, and imagine it's a clock face and they're pointing 10 to 2 on that clock face. We're going to let our hips and our knees bend, and have a little check before we start this exercise at your knees. Now, we want to make sure that the knees haven't rolled in towards the floor, but that our knees are lined up with our first and our second toe each side. And every so often through this exercise, have a little check of that, because sometimes when we start getting a bit tired, those knees start drifting in and then we start sinking down. So keep a check also on that pelvis and bowl of water. So we're coming down to that squat, and we're going to reach our arms out, and let's make sure that those shoulders are melting down towards our waist, and that neck is long and that helium balloon head is lifted. And we're going to go into some little pulses, ever so tiny pulses, okay? And if you're starting to feel this work in your leg muscles and it's just a little bit too much, because don't forget, none of these exercises should be bringing on your pain. Yes, they're going to work muscles and you'll feel those muscles working, but it shouldn't be bringing on any of your pain. So if it does, then you can just come out, have a little rest, and then come back down into the squat. So if we can, we're going to stay down and just keep a little check on that knee over the first and second toe. And then if we can, stay down and add some little arm circles. Let's start working these shoulder muscles, these shoulder blade muscles, and keeping the tips of the shoulders drawn down away from the ears. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to really warm up here. We're coming towards the end of our warm up in a moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and come up nice and tall. Walk those legs back in, have a little shake of those legs out in front. Now, I want you to make sure this time that you've got plenty of space in front of you, okay? Because we're going to do something called a roll down, and then that's going to take us all the way down onto the floor, firstly on all fours and then onto our tummies. So just make sure that you've got a nice clear area to do that in. But before we go down onto the floor, let's come back and think about how we're standing. And we're going to really stretch into our whole spine now before we go into our main part of the class. So what we're going to do Nice and tall standing, take a big breath in. And as you let that breath go, we're going to nod our chin to our chest and we're going to roll our spine forward. And I want you to imagine that your spine is like a wheel rolling round and round. Big deep breath at the bottom. And then as you breathe out, tuck your tailbone under and imagine each bone of your spine is being built one on top of the other, on top of the other. Relax the shoulders down all the way back up tall. And we're going to go through that again, but this time only halfway down. So we start with a big breath in. And as we breathe out, we're nodding that chin down, we're rolling forwards. And when you reach your knees, we're going to bend our hips and our knees, place our hands just above the knees, and then we're going to uncurl our tailbone. And we're going to give a lovely stretch through that spine as we look forward. And then we're going to curl through the bottom of the spine all the way round to the top and rebuild that spine bone by bone all the way back up tall. We're going to go through that another 2 times, okay? So we'll take a big breath in. And as you breathe out, nod your chin down, roll nice and loosely. Make sure those arms are heavy and loose. Reach to your knees, pop your hands just above your knees, uncurl that tailbone, and look forward, enjoying a lovely stretch through the whole of that spine. And then we're curling round into a little cat stretch. And then we're rolling back up tall. Relax the shoulders down. And we'll go for one more. Big breath in. And as we breathe out, chin to your chest, roll nice and smoothly down. Nice loose arms. Bend the knees and the hips. Hands above the knees. Uncurl your tailbone. And then just look forward. Big stretch. Big breath as well. And then curl the tailbone under, round through the spine and grow back up nice and tall. Now, our next one is going to take us all the way down onto the mat. So we're taking a big breath in. And as we breathe out, again, rolling nice and smoothly through your spine, imagining it's a wheel rolling round and round and round until we then reach the floor. Big breath in. If you need to have a little bit more of a bend at the knees, that is absolutely fine. And then we're going to come down onto all fours. So, a bit more exercise now to get into our spines because they can get ever so stiff if we're sitting lots, particularly if you're sitting lots at school or sitting lots on the computer doing your homework. We want to make sure we keep our spines nice and mobile. So we want our hands just forward of the shoulders and our knees underneath our hips. We're going to keep our necks long and our spines nice and long. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up one hand, doesn't matter which one you start with, and we're going to feed it in between the opposite hand and the opposite knee. And we're going to come down to the mat for a big breath in. And then as you breathe out, we're going to come back to the middle where we started. And the same with the other side. So we're going to pick up one hand and we're going to feed it in between the other hand and the other knee. Well done. And we're going to come back to the middle. And we're going to go for that one more time each side. So we're going to feed that hand in between the hand and the knee on the opposite side. And let's come back to the middle. And then one last one. Lovely, big breath in to hold that lovely stretch in your mid-back and in your shoulder. And then back to the middle. Fantastic, well done. So, next thing now is to go onto our tummies. Now, this is where you'll need a folded towel or a cushion, anything that you've got to hand just to pop your forehead on, give you a bit of a breathing space underneath. So we're going to pop our forehead onto the cushion. And we're going to start a little bit of work into our shoulder areas and also into our upper back. So we're going to reach our arms down by our side. But before we start, let's check a few things throughout our body that we're in the right position. So this part of us sometimes wants to arch and sink towards the floor. So what we want to do is draw your tailbone, this part of you, away from the crown of your head so that we're flattening through that lower back. And sometimes people find it useful to get another little folded towel or cushion and pop it just under here, and that helps keep that nice long lower back position, stopping it from arching and scrunching up. So we also want our necks to be nice and long, and we're just going to take a moment to think about where we're breathing, just like we did at the start of this session. We're breathing wide into the bottom of our rib cage, filling those 2 balloon lungs up, and let that breath go. So let's take a big breath in. And this time as you breathe out, we're going to open up through the front of the chest, and we're going to reach our arms away from the floor, just a little distance, not too far. And we want to make sure that our shoulder blades aren't scrunching together, but that you're melting them down towards your waist, almost as if you're going to slot them in the back pocket of your trousers. So we take a big breath in, and as you breathe out, we open the chest and reach those arms, long fingertips. Big breath in to hold, and lower those arms down. And again, open through that chest, reach through those arms, imagining those shoulder blades melting down towards your waist. Lovely, well done. And down. And we're going to do one more before we get a little bit harder with this exercise. So keep a little check on that lower back, that it's not arching. Keep it long all the way through to the tailbone. And then rest those arms down. Now, that might be enough for some of you, but if you do want to make it a little bit harder, what you can do is open through the chest, reach those arms, and gently pulse the arms. Almost as if you've got 2 little pools of water under your palms, one this side and one the other, and you're splashing the palms of your hands in those pools of water. Each time, just keep a little check on the front of the chest so that you're open and that those shoulder blades are drawn down towards the waist. And rest. And let's do one more set of those arm pulses. Open the chest, reach through the arms and through the fingertips. That's it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and rest down. Fantastic. Now, we're going to change the position of our arms now. And before we carry on with a little bit more arm work, we're going to come down and think about our lower back and bottom muscles, okay? So, keeping that lower back nice and long, tailbone drawn down away from the crown of the head. We're going to take a big breath in, and what I'd like you to do is squeeze through one bottom muscle and reach that leg, again, just a little way from the floor, not too high. And then breathe in as you lower that leg down. And then you're going to breathe out, squeeze through the other bottom muscle, and then reach the leg away from the floor. And rest it back down. And sometimes people find it useful almost to imagine that they've got a tray of their favourite drinks resting along their lower back, and they don't want to spill them. Because sometimes with this exercise, as you reach that leg, that part of you wants to tip and tilt, but we want it lovely and still so we can work into those leg muscles properly. So we squeeze into the buttock first, and then imagine you're reaching the leg. Rather than lifting it, it's a reach all the way through to that big toe. Lovely. We're going to do one more each side before we come back up and think about the arms again. Fantastic. One last one. Brilliant. Okay. Now, we've got our arms rested with our elbows level with our shoulders. And we're going to take a big breath in. And as we breathe out, we're going to raise one arm like this.
And reach that arm forwards all the way through to those long fingers, right through to the fingertips. And we're going to breathe in as you glide that arm back and down. And then onto the other side. We're going to raise that arm. Keep the tips of the shoulder drawn down away from the tips of the ears. And we're going to glide that arm forwards, reaching through the fingers. And then glide that arm back. And we're going to keep going one side at a time. Reaching forwards. Just keep a little check all the way through your neck and the top of the shoulders, because sometimes when our muscles start getting a bit tired, we can start hunching up through the shoulders, and then that can be sore. And what we want to do is make sure that we're working through our shoulder blade muscles, lower down, and then gliding through those arms with a reach through the whole arm whilst keeping our neck nice and long. And one last one. Now this exercise is called swimming, because if you can imagine it, it's like a very, very slow motion swimming type movement. And what we're going to do next is combine the arm movements and the leg movements. So if we're going to raise this arm, it's the opposite leg that's going to go with this arm, okay? And this is a bit more of a challenge for the rest of our body to stay nice and still, because we want to still keep a little check on that imaginary tray of drinks across our lower back, making sure it's not spilling forwards or backwards or side to side as we glide the arm and add the leg movement into it. Now, for some of you, this might be just a little bit too much of a challenge, and that is okay. It's so important, as we said at the start, to listen to your body and only do the exercises that you are in control of. Yes, the exercises that work your body, but by going up the levels a little bit too much, we can start overworking the wrong parts. And we want to make sure that we're moving in the right and in the best way for our bodies. We've got one more to go each side. Reaching that arm forwards and back. And the opposite arm forwards. Lovely, and back. Now, before we carry on, I'm going to give our backs a nice stretch upwards as we press our heels of the hands through the floor and come upwards, looking straight ahead. Keep the shoulders drawn down. Big, deep breath. And as you breathe out, we're going to come back. Bring our knees underneath us, and we're going to sit back onto our heels, reaching our arms forwards. Now, this is such a lovely stretch for the whole of the body, all the way through from the fingertips, through the shoulders, all the way through the back, right down to the tailbone. And I want you to imagine that you're lengthening that tailbone further down towards the heels with each breath that you take. And you can gently sway side to side, just to give your body a bit of a chance to recover from the exercises that we have just done. Lovely. Okay, in your own time, we're going to come up, and this time we're going to lie on our sides. So, again, you need your small head cushion or your towel, whatever you've chosen. And we're going to pop it in between our face and our underneath arm. And we're going to start with a bit of balance check while lying on our side. So we want our fingertips just in front of our waist, and our feet, knees, hips, shoulders in a nice long line. So we don't want any bananas, okay? Now, it might be useful, if you're doing this at home, to line yourself up along a wall or a sofa, because that will help you know how well you're lined up. With the hand that's just in front of your waist, just use your fingertips ever so gently on the floor. What we don't want is for you to be gripping onto the floor, okay? Because we want the challenge to be here now, into these side of the bottom muscles. So we're going to start with an ever so gentle lift and lower of this top leg. We're taking a big wide breath into the bottom of your rib cage, and as we breathe in, as we breathe out, we're going to raise that leg up not too high, because we want to still stay nice and long through the whole body, and let it rest down. And we're raising that leg up. Good. And letting it rest down. And see if we can keep nice and balanced. And if you feel you've got the balance pretty much nailed, what you can do is just pop your hands just on the top of your pelvis. And that'll make the challenge a little bit greater for you. Now, another thing just to keep a check on with any of these exercises lying on your side is what's going on down here between your waist and the mat. And sometimes what can happen is when you're lifting the leg and lowering it, the waist crunches down into the mat. So I want you to imagine that you've got a nice big juicy marshmallow between your waist and the mat, and you don't want to squash it. So you keep that top hip drawn down away from your top shoulder, little bit of space, don't squash that marshmallow. So we're raising that top leg into the air and we're lowering it down. And what we can do, we can add a little bit of a point and flex of your foot and your ankle to this. So we can point our foot and then we can flex it up towards you. We can point our foot, lovely, and flex it up towards you. And don't forget, at any point you can pop your fingertips back down just in front of your waist. Lovely. Now, let's work a bit more deeply into these bottom muscles. So we're going to bend our hips and our knees. Keep a little check that that marshmallow hasn't squashed. If you think it has, come back and draw that top hip away from the top shoulder. We're going to imagine that you've super glued your feet together now, okay? And your top hip is ever so slightly rolled forwards. We're going to take a big breath in. And as you breathe out, you're going to squeeze into that top buttock and open up into what we call the clam. And then we're going to breathe in and lower that knee down. Fantastic. Now, sometimes this exercise can be a little bit tricky to get absolutely right. So it's really important when you're doing this that you can feel it deep in that buttock, that top buttock. If you start feeling it further down on the side of your thighs, it's important that you change your position ever so slightly until you can feel it in here. So that might be that you bring the knees up a little bit, or that you fold the feet back a little bit, okay? Or maybe you roll the pelvis a little bit forward. Whatever you need to do to make sure that you're feeling it deep in there. And when you are doing the clam, what's ever so important is that you don't let the pelvis roll back and forth towards the ceiling. So one thing you can imagine is that you put car headlamps on the front of each hip and they're shining forwards towards the wall in front. And what you don't want is them shining towards the ceiling. So we're going to carry on with a few more of the clam. It does really get into those deep bottom muscles. So we're not going to do too many, just 2 more. Lovely. And the last one. Fantastic. Now, while we're in this position, we're going to do a lovely stretch for that top leg, quads, and the front of the hip, because we work those muscles really hard in our warm-up with all of those squats. So to do that, we're going to take our foot and our ankle, and we're going to bring that knee back in line with our hip. If you want a bit of a deeper stretch, you can bring the knee ever so slightly behind you, but just be really careful if you do that, because we don't want you to be then arching that back and arching particularly your lower back, because that can get sore. So just keep the knee in line with your hip as you've got the ankle pulled towards you, and that should be enough to get a good stretch into the front of that hip and across the thigh. And with any of our stretches, holding it for about 20 seconds is absolutely enough to really get into that stretch. And stretching is really important for allowing our body's muscles a chance to recover when we've worked them hard. But just a few more moments into that stretch. And we're going to gently release the stretch, and in your own time, we're going to come up. We're going to pop the head cushion the other side. But before we go down and exercise the other leg, we're just going to come up onto our knees to have a little bit more of a spine stretch. So now we're coming back up onto our knees, so a bit more upright. We want our knees underneath our hips, and let's come back and think about this pelvis, this imaginary bowl of water that we don't want to spill. So if I just turn to the side so you can see, what we don't want is for you to be up like this, where that bowl of water is spilling out the back, but also we don't want our bottom sticking out with that bowl of water spilling out the front. So just keep a little check that we're nicely in the middle. So we're going to start with our arms out and then a little bit of a bend in the elbows. Imagine those car headlights are still on the front of your hips and they are shining forwards, and we want to keep them shining forwards and not side to side. We're going to take a wide breath in to the bottom of our rib cage, and as you breathe out, we're going to rotate round to one side. Big deep breath to hold that lovely stretch into the middle of your back. And then back to the middle, keeping this part of you nice and still. And then we're going to rotate to the other side. Big deep breath into the bottom of your rib cage. And then back to the middle. And another thing just to keep a little check on when we're up in this position is that we don't start leaning back to get a bit more of a stretch, so that we're still long and tall through our spines, out the crown of our head, and our helium balloon head is switched on again. Now we're upright. So we're going to rotate round, big deep breath, and back to the middle. Lovely. And one more the other side. Big wide deep breath, and back to the middle. Now before we go down onto that side, we've got one more exercise in this high kneeling position, which is called our mermaid. So what we're going to do, we're going to slide one hand down one thigh. We're going to sweep the opposite arm up and reach towards the ceiling, keeping that arm tucked in close to the face. And let's look to the back of the hand as we take a wide breath into that rib cage. And then we're going to rest the arms down and come back to the middle. And then we're going to slide that arm down that thigh, sweep the other arm up and reach towards the ceiling. Nice long fingers, look to the back of the hand, big wide breath. And then come back to the middle. And we've just got one more each side before we go down on the other side. Little reach down, sweep the arm up, look to the back of the hand, big breath in. And then come back up tall, and one last one. Arm down the thigh, sweep up and reach. Big deep breath to hold that lovely stretch through your side. And then back into the middle. Fantastic. Now, we work this leg really hard. We need to work the other leg so that we balance everything out. So we're going to come down on this side. We're going to set ourselves up with our folded towel or cushion. And we're starting with our legs out nice and long. So we've got our feet, knees, hips, shoulders, all in a nice long line. And if you need to, fingertips just in front of your waist. Now, gentle draw down of that top hip away from the shoulder. Little space there with that imaginary marshmallow in that you don't want to squash. And you are ready to go into our lift and lower. So we're going to take a wide breath in. And as you breathe out, we're going to lift that leg up. And then we're going to lower it back down. Just starting with this basic level, just so that we're keeping a little check on this waist and that we're not squashing that marshmallow. Lovely, well done. So again, just a little reminder that we're working deep into those bottom muscles. But then we can also add a bit of ankle movement as we point the foot and then flex it towards you as you lower that leg down. So we're pointing the foot and then flexing it towards you. Lovely. Pointing that foot. And if you need a bit more of a challenge, you can pop the hand on the top of your hip and carry on. But that is entirely your choice. And see what your body is saying to you. Listen to your body, as we said at the start. One more. Lovely. And then we're going to fold those knees up. Imagine that we've got super glued feet together, hips facing forward with those car headlamps on.
And drawing that top hip away from the top shoulder, that marshmallow, nice and snugly there, but not squashed. So we're going into our clam. We're going to open that top knee and we're going to lower it down. And just a little reminder, when we did this the other side, make sure that you can feel it deep into that top buttock muscle. And if you can't, stop the exercise slightly, adjust where your legs are, maybe up or maybe further down, and maybe your pelvis slightly forward until you're feeling it deep into that buttock rather than down the side of the leg. And it's useful really with the clam to have the fingertips in front of your tummy, because sometimes if you've got the hands up here, it can make you come back a little bit further, and then you just end up using your back muscles when we really want to work deep into that top buttock. Lovely, well done. Hopefully really starting to feel it in that top buttock. We just got 2 more. Keeping those hips facing forward with those car headlamps shining that way and not up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to take a moment to stretch through the quads, the top, the front of the hips, front of the thighs, as we bring that foot and ankle towards your bottom, and make sure that your knee is in line with your hip. And with any of the stretching that we're doing, or any stretches that you do, it's really important that you just breathe nice and relaxed. You want to allow the breath to go deep into the bottom of the rib cage. And as you let that breath go, allow the body to go deeper into that stretch. And again, like we said before, just about a 20-second hold of that stretch is enough for now. You've done really well. We're nearly getting down to our cool down. You've done fantastically. It's been a lot of hard work in this class. Gently let that stretch go. And we're going to bring the folded towel round to rest your head on back onto your backs. So we've also worked our bottom muscles really hard in the last half an hour, and the backs of our thighs. So we need to stretch those just like we've stretched the front of our thighs and the front of our hips. So we're first of all going to stretch through our bottom muscles. So we're starting with this side. We're going to cross that foot over the front of the opposite knee, and then we're going to take our hands and support that opposite leg behind the thigh, and you should feel that bottom stretch really deep into that thigh. Now, if you can't really feel it that much, what you can do is gently press that knee away from you and you'll feel it a little bit more deeply. And then if you want an even better stretch, what you can do is ever so slightly bring that leg across. And the same as when we did the stretch a moment ago, about 20 seconds, focusing on your breath. Big wide breath into your rib cage. And as you let that breath go, allow the body to deepen into that stretch a bit further. And then ever so gently, let that leg down, uncross, and we need to stretch the bottom muscles for the opposite side. So we've got the opposite foot over the knee, supporting that leg up, and you probably find that one side's a little bit tighter than the other, and that's quite normal in many, many people. And we're going to gently press that knee away from you, hopefully feeling a bit of a deeper stretch when you do that. And if you want a further stretch again, bring the legs across. Lovely. Big wide breaths as you hold that stretch. And then come back to the middle. Let the feet come back down onto the floor, and let's stretch through the back of the thighs, the hamstrings. So we're going to lengthen that leg up to the ceiling, and we can hold the back of the thigh just above the knee area. And in addition to this stretch, we can add a point of the foot and a flex. So we've got a point and a flex. And that stretches some of the other structures that travel all the way up the back of our legs into our spines. And if you can, keep your head and your neck nice and relaxed down on the towel or the pillow, and try and keep your shoulders nice and relaxed down as well. Lovely. Okay, and let's go for the other side to finish off this set of stretching. So we've got a point and a flex. And again, you might find that you're tighter one side than the other. Lots of people do find that. Brilliant. Just a few more movements of that foot and that ankle. And rest that leg down. We're going to roll onto our side. And then we're going to come into like a little crouch position. Tuck your toes underneath. And we're going to roll our bodies all the way back up into standing, imagining we're rebuilding our spine lovely and tall towards the ceiling. So we're going to lower our heels down, allow the arms to relax and hang nice and loose, allow the legs to loosen off as well, relax the whole body forwards, and then when you're ready, we're going to build that spine back up by tucking the tailbone under, and imagine each bone of your spine is being rebuilt bone by bone, relaxing the shoulders down and rebuilding all the way through the back of the neck, right through to the crown of the head. And imagine then that helium balloon head is switched on, lifting the whole of you tall towards the ceiling. We're going to stretch through our arms a little bit as we start winding down. So we're going to reach our arms up tall to the ceiling, place the hands behind the back of the head, glide those shoulders up towards the ears, and then melt them down towards the waist. And let's add a little chin nod towards the chest as we stretch through the back of the neck. And don't forget, keep breathing nice and wide into the bottom of the rib cage. Coming back up tall, reach those fingertips up, circle round and down. And again, big circle, reach to the ceiling, hands behind the back of the head, glide those shoulders up, melt them down, chin to the chest for that lovely stretch. Rebuild that spine and reach tall. Now with this reach, I want you to keep the arms up and you're going to look up to the fingertips. And we're going to imagine that there's a ladder hanging down from the ceiling, and you are going to reach for the next rung of that ladder with each arm. And what we're aiming for here is a lovely opening out through the rib cage with each reach taller and taller. And one more time each side. And circle the arms round and down. And we're going to place the hands just on the lower part of your rib cage as we finish off with some breaths in wide. And let that breath go. And again, big wide breath. And as you let that breath go, let the arms hang loosely by your side. And that brings us to the end of that session, and you've done absolutely brilliantly. It was a hard session. We've worked a lot of the body, but hopefully you feel more stretched and taller and lighter as we finish.